Here on Earth, we wear clothes to keep our body in a comfortable temperature range according to the weather. But in space, well, for that, we get a specially designed multi-layer suit that's vital to keep you alive. Without it, you'd be dead in, let's say, 15 seconds. And that's even if you hold your breath or close your eyes. So, how do these spacesuits work? Let's find out. First off, why do we need a spacesuit? If it wasn't for the pressure of our atmosphere, quite frankly, we'd all be dead. Why? Because the atmospheric pressure was what compresses our bodies, keeping fluids in a liquid state. And it also keeps the concentration of oxygen high enough, so there's plenty for us to share. With that said, as you go higher into the atmosphere and the pressure drops, you pretty much run the risk of not having enough oxygen. But don't panic, it usually happens around the 40,000 feet mark, and that's where the pressure suits come in. Back in the 1940s, pilots and balloonists started wearing these partial pressure suits that, in essence, were tight-fitted suits. Basically, what they did was compress a pilot's body to mimic the atmospheric pressure and keep them alive in unfavorable weather conditions. And well, that's basically what inspired NASA's first spacesuits worn by the Mercury astronauts in the 1960s. But these missions were pretty simple Earth orbital missions, where the astronaut was nice and cozy in their pressurized spacecraft. So why did they need the suits? Well, it was to protect them from a sudden drop in pressure. You see, the suits basically had a small amount of trapped gas that would quickly inflate if and when the cabin depressurized. With that said, NASA had bigger plans. NASA didn't want its astronauts cooped up in a spacecraft. Like, what's the point of sending them to space if they're not going to explore the limitless world of the unknown? So, NASA had plans of setting them out on spacewalks, which meant that these spacesuits needed to change. And then came the German suits that were full pressure suits with airflow and communications coming in through an umbilical that connected them to the spacecraft. And this was revolutionary because now the astronauts had a portable, wearable, little atmosphere they could survive in while exploring a world that could kill them in a second. But NASA still wasn't convinced. These suits allowed for short spacewalks, and NASA needed spacesuits that kept Apollo astronauts alive for hours at a time while also protecting them from the harsh environment, especially the moon's very obvious lack of atmosphere and whatnot. Yes, we're talking about the time Neil Armstrong marked history. Let's get to the real deal. How do these spacesuits work? So, a spacesuit has two functions: keep the astronaut alive and protect them from the heat, cold, and vacuum of space. Having said that, our top priority is the oxygen supply and maintaining the atmosphere pressure, because if you don't have that, the vacuum in space can literally suck your body inside out, and exposure can cause your flesh to balloon almost twice its normal size. So remember, pressure is important. Okay, so a majority of spacesuits will be pressurized around 4.7 psi, but it's also obviously important that while you have enough oxygen to breathe in, the suit can also safely dispose of carbon dioxide that you breathe out. It's not a one-way protection system here. So, spacesuits have a closed-loop system, much like a diver's rebreather, which allows you to use unused oxygen again. With that said, the system also needs to deal with the moisture you exhale to avoid the suit from steaming up. And maybe you're thinking, space technically has no temperature because, duh, no atmosphere. So if it's not hot or cold, what is it? Yeah, we know that's confusing, but here's the catch. You can actually be boiled or frozen to death if you're exposed to space. Like, if you're exposed directly to sunlight, 120 degrees is enough to cook you like a soft-boiled egg. And, on the other side, your hidden shadow could be shivering at negative 100 degrees. So what we're trying to say is, there's no balance, just two extremes, either of which will definitely kill you. Having said that, spacesuits need all the insulation they can get, but also a reflective outer layer. And now, you know why the spacesuits we've seen all our lives are sparkling white, like they came right out of a laundry detergent ad. But while insulation keeps you warm, we also need to get rid of the body heat inside the suit with heated exchanges or, in other cases, wait for it, water-filled underpants. Sounds kinda uncomfortable, but it also protects you against radiation, which you'd be getting abundantly if you're exposed to sunlight, and also from collisions with small pieces of micrometeoroids. But wait, if you can't get out of your spacesuit, how do you exactly manage your bodily functions? Yeah, so if an astronaut needs to go pee or something, they aren't going to take off their spacesuit and gamble between frostbite and third-degree burn. As absurd as it sounds, they have to go in the spacesuit. And well, NASA made sure they weren't so uncomfortable and came up with a maximum absorbency garment, which is a fancy name for a diaper. Talk about don't forget where you came from. And while all that's keeping the astronauts alive and comfortable, they need to be able to communicate with other astronauts and down here with the people at NASA. So, they got this communication system that reports an astronaut's oxygen levels and everything that's important. Having said that, everything comes with a price, and the price on the set of the state-of-the-art spacesuit is $12 million. Yep, that's quite a lot. Moving on, how do they assemble these spacesuits? For starters, their spacesuits were made up of three parts, one of which is the good old diaper. But next comes a 3-layer, liquid-cooled garment that's got cold water circulating to keep the astronaut's temperature down. And if that wasn't bulky enough, astronauts wore an additional 20 22-layer suit that came with a full communication system. So basically, every astronaut was wearing a pretty claustrophobic but fully equipped personal spacecraft. Having said that, as the space program grew, new ideas came flooding in, and with enough research to back that up, spacesuits have evolved. So here's the thing, spacesuits aren't custom made anymore. They just come with interchangeable parts now. So we're talking upper and lower torsos, gloves, arms, helmets, and boots. And with extravehicular mobility units, astronauts got the freedom they needed as they safely went out on spacewalks for over 8 hours at a time. Up next, what are the spacesuits going to look like in the future? As we look forward to missions going to Mars, or even dreaming about repopulating there, NASA's already working on something new. Taking advantage of the fact that Mars indeed has an atmosphere, NASA's coming up with a futuristic spacesuit called Z2, which is pretty lightweight but still durable enough to withstand Mars's environment. And while safety and comfort will always be the top priority, they're also getting a fashion statement, as scientists now want to ditch the bulky look and opt for something more skin-tight and streamlined. The current spacesuits won't cut it on the moon, which is why NASA's working on the new ones. It'll include better mobility with minimum effort. While the Apollo suits needed to be durable and adaptable for launch, entry, and lunar exploration, the new spacesuits can be light enough with a lot more bearings than the Apollo suits. They've got bearings on the thighs, waist, hips, and ankles, giving astronauts all the mobility they need to move around freely. And of course, it also affects their moonwalk. Not the Michael Jackson kind, although imagine an astronaut pulling those dance moves in space. We'd love to see that. With that said, how are the Z2 suits better? First off, we might not have to wait too long to see actual results. The pretty extensive testing campaign for the Z2 spacesuit is set to begin in November 2022. However, it won't really be ready or eligible for spaceflight because they're still stuck in the prototype phase and need to perfect the design before it can make a trip to space. The Z2 is a major upgrade from the Z1 spacesuit, which was one of Time magazine's best inventions 10 years ago. One of the most significant upgrades is the hard composite upper torso, which will give the astronauts the long-term durability they need and something a planetary extravehicular activity, EVA suit, needs more than anything. Next, the Z2's got materials designed to function optimally in the vacuum of space. And while safety and comfort are the priority, we are loving the new aesthetic. It's about time NASA focused on the look of the spacesuits. The Z2 is a sci-fi dream with its newly selected cover layer that's got electroluminescent wiring and a stark futuristic look. And even though it's a non-flight suit, the cover layer still plays a huge part in the ground-based testing. In fact, it also protects spacewalkers from micrometeorite strikes and the extreme temperatures we mentioned earlier, not to forget the famously harmful radiation. That's a wrap for this video. Would you ever survive in the claustrophobic spacesuit? What do you think about the Z2 spacesuits? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.